Let's bring in Tom White, co-host of Fast Market, a senior options contributor, right away to help set up the action today. All right, let's talk about the airline space. I mean, you are seeing the airlines get dinged. You're seeing United make some moves to adjust around this. Can you kind of catch people up in how you're seeing this play out across the landscape of the airliners, Tom?
Yeah, it seems like Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy contacted the airlines. Scott Kirby, CEO of United Airlines, put out some statements that they're going to reduce 10% of the flights, over 40 different airports. They didn't give any clarity on which airports those are going to be, but I'm sure O'Hare's in the mix here in Chicago, and I'm sure JFK and maybe LaGuardia there in New York are going to be impacted. But this is going to be affecting roughly about 3,500 to 4,000 flights daily. Scott Kirby from United Airlines stated that it's not going to disrupt their international and long-haul routes. So that's a benefit for them because that's their higher margin parts of their business. But they don't have an end date time. These are going to start on tomorrow, on November 7th. Federal Aviation Administration Administrator Brian Bedford said additional measures could also be taken. And this comes as air traffic controllers aren't getting paid, TSA agents aren't getting paid. They say there's disruptions out there, Diane, but at the same time, my better half just got back from a flight and TSA lines were 4 minutes long. She said there was no impact to the TSA lines at San Francisco, in Chicago here also. So there are some concerns, but, if this impacts domestic-based carriers, who does that impact more? Delta Airlines, United, American Airlines, they've got the long haul, they've got the business travelers. But at the same time, you look at Southwest, how is that going to impact that company that's more domestically based? So we'll have to wait and see on this. You know what? The government shutdown into its record 37th day. At the same time, now that the elections are over, Diane, we're starting to hear some more rhetoric from the Democrats that, hey, they want to talk about a resolution to this. So maybe it doesn't come to fruition if they can get some type of vote or deal passed here, but definitely going to impact some of the airlines at this point.
Yeah, love the firsthand reporting from your other half about the flights. It's so funny. I noticed that, I don't know if you remember earlier this year, Newark had a bunch of issues, and so United was sending out messages to travelers to shift their plans. And I remember I got one of those messages. I decided to roll the dice, and I went to Newark Airport, and it was one of the most smooth experiences I've ever had flying. So, you never know. I feel like it's, a toss-up. Let's talk NVIDIA. You got this back and forth on, is it about America winning the AI arms race, or is it China, between these comments that Jensen Huang said. What's your take here?
Yeah, FT reporting this, that Jensen Huang came out basically and said, he told the Financial Times on Wednesday that China's going to win the AI race. Now, he did come out with a softer statement on X, on NVIDIA's, handle there. But this is the concern that I have. And I think a lot of people are stating this, that Jensen Huang says that they should be able to sell their chips to anybody. While the U.S. government and even China government says, hey, we don't want this in our, in our country at this point. We want to build up our own AI, but they need these high-end AI chips. He's kind of playing both sides here, Diane, if you think about it, because he wants to sell more chips to everybody, but at the same time, he's doing it for the benefit of his company at this point. So, there's restrictions that the U.S. has, and there's restrictions that China has as far as chip sales goes. But he's trying to play, I think, both sides of this. He said he did come out and say that China is nanoseconds behind America in AI. It's vital that America wins this by racing ahead, developing developers worldwide here to keep our lead here in the AI space. But you've got to take it with a grain of salt. He wants to sell more chips. At the same time, is China, do they have the capacity and the technology to jump over the U.S.? And I think that's a concern that he has, and maybe that, that the U.S. government should probably take into consideration here as he's, as I said, playing both sides of the game here.
That's a good point because obviously, you know, he would want to sell chips in China as well. But what's interesting is this is certainly not rattling the stock like when you think about the DeepSeek situation earlier this year, which feels like it's so far in the rearview mirror. No one's even thinking about that anymore. All right, let's talk about one of the earnings that I know you've been across, Qualcomm. It did beat expectations as far as I saw. Shares under a little bit of pressure this morning. What's your take?
Yeah, they beat, on top line revenue. They beat on EPS. They guided higher. I mean, it was a strong quarter for the chip maker. And then, this comes on the back of the news that they had just about a week and a half ago where they're going to start getting into the AI space and compete against Nvidia and AMD and others in that space. They did come out. Revenue rose 10% to $11.27 billion. That was above expectations. But they did have a tax expense in there. The company recorded a net loss of $3.12 billion, or about $2.89 a share. But usually those get thrown out. Qualcomm's losing some of their market share to Apple. Apple came out with a couple new products that are using their own in-house chips. That's a concern. They expect to maybe lose that business down the road completely. But that's been one of those conversations that we've had over the last few years. For the first quarter, Qualcomm said it expects revenue of about 11.8 to 12.6 billion or about 12.2 billion at the middle of the range. That was above expectations also. And if you look at the metrics across their revenue streams, they beat across the board, whether it was Internet of Things, whether it was automotive, whether it was the chip sales to the smartphone market at this point. The only thing that kind of missed expectations was their licensing business that slid about 7% to about 1.41 billion. But overall, a pretty good report. Maybe, with the tax charge that they had to take, and then maybe the expectations that they're going to lose that Apple business has investors concerned, because remember, this along with Texas Instruments in the chip space have been severely underperforming the other names within the chip space. So take that into consideration. But at the same time, remember what happened to AMD yesterday on a good report, raising guidance. Initially, the stock was down. Stock ended up 2.3% higher. We'll see if that happens here in Qualcomm after a pretty good report.
Great point there. Thank you, Tom. That's Tom White, co-host of Fast Market and senior options contributor. Appreciate the deep dive in Qualcomm's earnings and the discussion about Nvidia and beyond.